Hello to everybody. I am Sergio Albani from the European Space Agency, and I will introduce to you the ESA scientific testbed in CASPAR. I will talk first about the importance of Earth observation data. Then we will talk about benefits, risks, and policies of long-term data preservation in ESA. And then I will talk to you about the ESA scientific testbed in CASPAR before to conclude. Just a brief introduction about the European Space Agency. ESA, through worldwide receiving ground stations, acquires data from satellites, and these data are archived and processed at the so-called processing and archiving facilities. For the time being, ESA-ESRIN is the largest European Earth observation data provider and operates as the reference European Center for Earth observation data payload exploitation. At present, we have several thousand ESA worldwide users with access to about 10 million references for metadata, about 4 petabytes of data and derived information. As you can see in this slide, there's an Earth observation data avalanche because, as you can see in this picture, for the time being, our archives contain more or less 4 petabytes of data that are data from ESA missions like ERS and ENVISAT, and third-party missions like Landsat and SPOT that are archived in the center you can see in the other picture on the left. The plans of new missions indicate that in the next 10-15 years, we will have 5-10 times data more to be archived. And there's a similar trend for other national space agencies. Why these data are so important? Essentially because these archives ensure a global coverage of the Earth. From several points of view, these data are multi-sensor, so from optical to active radar sensor. We have a long time series of data with a time span from a few years to decades. We have variable geographical coverage, so from local scale to regional to global, with a variable geometrical resolution from few meters to few hundreds meters, and a variable temporal resolution from few days up to months. We have to point out that in the last 10 years, there was a strong increase of the demand to access the ESA historical archives because researchers and scientists need this data in order to perform studies about the environment, long-term science, and so on. So we can't afford the prospect to lose these digital records of science. What we have to do, we have to preserve this data, this unique data set, against changes in hardware, software, environment, knowledge base of the scientific community, and similar. So the issues for the near future is to identify what type and what amount of data we need to preserve, what should be the location of archives, and to define some technical choices like what is the best format or the best media support to preserve this data. And last but not least, the availability of adequate funds. Of course, all these decisions should be taken in coordination with other data owners and providers and with the support of the user community. This is the reason for which ESA, after consultation with its member states, has formed an LTDP, that means a long-term data preservation, working group within the ground segment coordination body in order to define an Earth observation long-term data preservation strategy. This strategy wants to preserve all the European Earth observation data for an unlimited time span, ensuring accessibility and usability through a cooperative and harmonized approach among the Earth observation data owners, by the application of European long-term data preservation common guidelines. For the time being, ESA is going to apply these guidelines to its own missions. And another big step in the preservation direction is that now long-term data preservation is included in the ESA general budget under basic activities. Meanwhile, ESA is participating and promoting to projects related to long-term data preservation. And the reason for which ESA is participating to such project is to evaluate new solutions, new procedures to maintain leadership in using services, emerging services in Earth observation, to share knowledge with other entities, of course, also outside of the scientific domain, and to extend the results and the outputs of this cooperative project in other Earth observation and the ESA communities. The ESA participation to the CASPAR project is mainly driven by the interest that we have in the consolidation of the OIS reference model that we are already using in several internal initiatives like SAFE, that means Standard Archive Format for Europe, and it's our archiving format, and to develop preservation techniques and tools able to cover not only the preservation of the data, but also of the knowledge associated to them. What is the ESA role in CASPAR? ESA is playing the role of user and infrastructure provider for the scientific data testbed. Now I will introduce to you the activities that ESA has done in the framework of the CASPAR project. We have done a lot of things about this for the setup of the testbed. First, the setup of an appropriate framework in ESA-ESRIN, then the definition and the collection of a significant sample of a whole processing chain dataset that I will explain later, the conversion of data from the native format to a complete OIS compliant format, the generation of appropriate representation information, descriptive information, scientific community profile based on ontologies that describe the scientific workflows. Then we have ingested all this data in a fully CASPAR-based system, and we have coped with some long-term data preservation problems by using just the CASPAR components and tools. First, I would like to introduce the data set that we have used for the testbed. We have chosen data from GOME, that means Global Ozone Monitoring Experiment, and this is a sensor on board the ESA-ESRIN satellite. We have chosen this data set because it has a big total amount of information with a high level of complexity, because this data set is unique. It provides more than 11 years of global coverage. And it's a very important data set because several scientists and the principal investigators on a routine basis access to this data for research projects like ozone depletion monitoring and climate change. We have also to point out that it's just a test case because similar issues involve many other Earth observation instrument datasets. This is our dataset. We have level 0 data that are raw data. That means the data as are acquired from the satellite. Using the so-called level processors, by means of auxiliary data and, of course, some knowledge, like documents and methods, we can process this data, as you can see in this picture, and obtain higher level products. So we can obtain, for example, level 1 product that are radiances and reflectances. Through an appropriate processing, we can obtain level 1C data that are fully calibrated level 1 data. And this is the focus of our testbed, the processing from level 1 to level 1C. So from raw data plus calibration parameters to fully calibrated level 1 data. Through another processing, we can obtain, using another processor, other auxiliary data, and other knowledge, we can obtain level 2 data that are geophysical data as a trace gas amount. Here it's an example of a level 2 data. Through another processing, we can obtain level 3 data that are a mosaic composed by several level 2 data with an interpolation of data values in order to fill the satellite gaps. Of course, we also need to preserve data viewers in order to be able to see inside the data, and examples of applications, format converters, and similar. So let's talk about the preservation scenario that we have implemented in ESA. We have decided to preserve the ability to process data from one level to another. And that means to preserve all the components, the GOME data, and all the components that enables the processing for generating products at higher levels. We have chosen, as I told you before, to preserve the ability to produce GOME level 1C data starting from level 1 data. And currently, the ESA testbed is able to demonstrate that we can preserve this GOME processing chain, at least against changes in hardware and in software like operating system, compilers, libraries, drivers, that can affect the possibility to run the appropriate processor. So first, we have to identify an appropriate data set. We have to preserve GOME level 1 products and all the associated knowledge. So we need to preserve knowledge about what is the GOME sensor, what is ozone, and other documents more specifically related to this kind of products. We have to preserve the processor that is needed to process data from level 1 to level 1C, and all the associated knowledge. In this case, we can take as example the user manual. And we also have to preserve the source code of the processor with all the related information. This code is written in the C language, so we should preserve what is the C language. We have developed a complete OIS compliant dataset for the ingestion into the CASPAR system. As you can see here, we have adapted our safe format for this particular kind of data. So we have the data object, that is the GOME data, the level 1 GOME data, or the processor. As a reference, we have used the file name itself. The context field is empty, while as fixity, we have used a CRC code. In the provenance field of PDI, we have written the principal investigator who recorded the data and all the information related to storage, handling, and migration of the data. We have no packaging restriction, while the metadata is extracted by the product and contained in the safe manifest that's for the descriptive information. Because as you can see in the right bottom corner, a GOME product is composed by the data, the binary data, from a manifest file in which are contained PDI, descriptive information, and representation information, and from schemas file that needs to validate the data. Okay, just to conclude, we want to introduce the preservation scenario. That is, we have ingested into this completely CASPAR-based system a complete OIS-compliant GOME level 1 processing dataset. Then we can imagine that something, maybe the operating system, changes, so we need to access the source code of the processor to develop a new processor, to re-ingest it in order to preserve the ability to process data from level 1 to level 1C. We can cope with these changes related to this processing, managing a correct information flow through the system administrator, and the user, and the users, using a framework developed, I can repeat it, just the CASPAR components. Another interesting thing that I would like to point out is that we are able to return to a user asking for level 1C data, not only the